Chapter 54. Then Adam and Eve stood up in the cave and prayed the entire night until the morning dawned, and when the sun came up, they both went out of the cave. Their minds were wandering from the heaviness of sorrow, and they didn't know where they were going, and they walked in that condition to the southern border of the garden, and they began to go up that border until they came to the eastern border, which was Land's End. And the cherub who guarded the garden was standing at the western gate to guard it from Adam and Eve in case they should attempt to suddenly come into the garden. When Adam and Eve thought the cherub was not watching, they came to the eastern border of the garden, but as they were standing by the gate, as if they desired to go in, the cherub turned around as if to put them to death according to the order God had given him, and the cherub suddenly came with a flashing sword of fire in his hand. When he saw them, he went toward them to kill them, for he was afraid that God would destroy him if they went into the garden without God's order. And the sword of the cherub seemed to shoot flames a distance away from it. But when he raised it over Adam and Eve, the flame of the sword did not flash out at them. Because of this, the cherub thought that God was approving to them and was bringing them back into the garden. And the cherub stood wondering. He could not go up to heaven to ascertain God's order regarding Adam and Eve's entering the garden, so continued to stand by them, unable to leave them because he was afraid that if they should enter the garden without permission, God would destroy him. When Adam and Eve saw the cherub coming towards them with a flaming sword of fire in his hand, they fell on their faces from fear and were as dead. Then the heavens and the earth shook, and another cherubim came down from heaven to the cherub who guarded the garden, and saw him amazed and silent. Then, again, other angels came down close to the place where Adam and Eve were, and the cherubs were split between joy and sorrow. They were joyous because they thought that God was approving to Adam, and wished him to return to the garden, and wished to return him to the gladness he once enjoyed. But they were sorrowful over Adam, because he was fallen like a dead man, he and Eve, and they said to themselves, Adam has not died in this place, but God has put him to death for coming to this place and wishing to enter the garden without his permission.